Thursday, July 20th, and this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about the Zeal and the creative powers of geeks. Let's do this.
You know it's a good day when you do a podcast after having some barbecued chicken.
Oh, yeah, we barbecued some chicken today, which is actually the first time that I have personally attempted to barbecue chicken on my own.
And I gotta say, you did a pretty good job, all things considered.
Yeah, I think next time it will be much more awesome because I will, A, marinate the chicken longer, which I didn't do only because I woke up this morning and the chicken that was in the refrigerator was rotten and I had to go buy some new chicken.
Partly because we'd forgotten to marinate it for the previous several days.
I guess that's good. We didn't waste marinade on rotten chicken.
Yeah.
But also...
you know the worst thing is, if you'd marinated it and then not used it, you probably wouldn't have noticed the rot in the marinade.
Yeah, it smelled real bad. I almost barfed. But I'm keeping the streak alive. It's been a month maybe?
Yeah. I gotta admit though, almost nothing in the world other than a sack of rotten potatoes smells worse than rotten raw chicken.
Rotten chicken smells pretty damn bad.
Particularly raw rotten chicken. If it's been cooked, it doesn't smell nearly so bad.
Yeah, but next time I barbecue chicken, especially with our awesome special teriyaki sauce that we have, you can fare. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, I'll fare with 2 3s and a P and an H.
All right. So we got 2 geekbacks today.
Yep, they're both short. And actually, the people who wrote us...
And they're almost the same thing.
The people who wrote us are probably going to be... somewhat angry at the fact that we're doing 2 geekbacks when their complaint was that we're spending too much time on geekbacks.
Well, hold on. We're going to read both of them, and then we'll reply to both of them.
All right, so I got this short one from Spirit Fiend. It's real short. I'll just read the whole thing. I think the feedback segment is good, though I don't think it should come at the expense of the news bits. I think the commentary on the news is one of the best parts of Geeknights and is one of the reasons I download and listen every day since I don't really have such a great interest in conventions, anime, or board games. I'm also glad Rim enjoyed my fallacy by accident comment in the jury nullification thread. You guys should definitely do an episode on logical fallacies. Keep up the great work, Spirit Fiend.
All right, and this one is from Trisha. Hi, hello, I'm Trisha, a punk kid from Florida, I guess.
Yeah, punk kids.
I just wanted to say that I don't want you guys to make the episodes shorter! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. But I guess if you really have to make them shorter, oh well. Another thing, don't make the news shorter. Geeknights has evolved into the news and then main bit podcast. And I rather like it like that. Most of the times, I just listen for the news since I don't really care much for the other stuff. Computer lingo and board games aren't the most interesting to listen to. I haven't listened to all of Tuesday's show, and I probably won't since I'm not really into board games. Flat face. But I was really disappointed with Monday's podcast. Bring back the news! I mean, it's nice that you guys talk about sci-fi. In fact, I just finished reading Foundation recently. But if you guys talk about sci-fi books, I'd really like it if you can do what you did with that episode you talked about the Big O. Just talking a little about a book isn't really enough, I think. Sci-fi novels deserve a whole episode with spoilers and whatnot talking about the book. Another problem I have is you guys have a lot of inside jokes, or jokes some people won't get if they haven't seen a certain show or played a certain game, etc. And it irritates me, but it's not that bad.
Oh, really?
Other than these things, your show is awesome, and I probably continue to listen despite my complaints since there just aren't that many other podcasts and I listen to.
All right.
Well,
I want to start with the inside jokes because I can kill that off real quick. Most of the quote-unquote inside jokes we make are actually very common knowledge on the popular tech geek internet websites. They're not really that obscure. We really tend to avoid the obscure ones.
Yes, and a lot of them, second to the internet tech website ones like Oh Really and Haha, there are the next comes the Simpsons, Seinfeld, Futurama, Family Guy jokes. And you have South Park also. So if you got all those covered, there aren't that many jokes left over that are really inside.
I mean, it seems that most geeks, though there might be some exceptions, for a long time, Simpsons quoting, the act of hearing a quote from a Simpsons episode and being able to continue the quote until the end, or make a similar relevant quote.
That was a stat you had on your character sheet.
That
Simpsons
was like
quoting 7 points.
That we would have geek downs, kind of like a stare down, where people would just keep quoting Simpsons at each other until someone ran out.
Or until someone said, I don't know that one. Oh, you have the low skills.
Shake harder, boy.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. Plus, I can tell you with certainty that anytime we use an actual inside joke, like, here's one. So there were 8 people. Everybody was
Gaga.
Gaga. Okay.
If we use an inside joke that you don't understand, join the forums and ask about it, and we will tell you all about the joke.
For example, the one we just did, the only reason we haven't done an entire episode on
It's
that
because we're trying to get it to play it on the show.
Yeah, we have 2 copies of this file on 2 separate dead hard drives.
We'll get it back. We'll get it back. It's still good. It's still
Anyway.
good. It's just a little crashed hard drive. It's still good.
It's gone, Dad.
Oh, I know. Okay. As for talking about sci-fi and stuff, I completely agree that, the episodes like we did with Big O
Yeah.
are way better. It's just that a lot of the things to talk about, it takes a long time to finish watching or finish reading something, especially for both me and Rim to do it. And we can't do those great episodes unless we've both completed something.
Which one is much easier for anime.
Because we can both watch it at the same time.
And despite that, go through and look at how many Final Thoughts anime episodes we've done versus how many previews and reviews we've done.
Yep.
We've only finished, I think, 2 or 3 shows since we started Geeknights.
I mean, we could do more Final Thoughts shows and shows that are kind of old, but, a lot of other podcasts cover that. And
I mean, we will eventually.
Yeah.
And we're also going to review a lot of old shows.
The thing is, especially for the old shows, while we know them well because they are old and we've watched them many times, we really have to watch them again before we do a legitimate episode that does them a good service.
Yep, especially those perennial shows that we watch periodically every few years.
Yeah, so those Final Thoughts episodes, I agree, are the best and awesome, but we can't do too many of them simply because we can't do too many of them, especially during convention season.
Now, also, a little secret, the Monday episode where we talked about sci-fi was mostly a cop-out because we didn't have anything better to do and we had both recently finished sci-fi books.
Yep.
Once we both trade books and read each other's book, each one of those books is going to get a full Final Thoughts episode. I promise you that.
Yep. Plus, also, I've read a lot of comic books recently, and Rim hasn't read any. So if he starts to read some of them, then we can do really awesome episodes about them.
Yep. Plus, once we watch some more anime, we'll get some more of that in there.
Yeah. Especially because right now we're in the middle of anime series. As soon as they finish, then, we can have Final Thoughts episodes.
Now, anyway, to address both of the geekbacks, we asked everyone for feedback as we're kind of changing the format of the show a tiny bit, and so far, 100% of the feedback has been that everyone wants the news to be long and unrelated to the rest of the show.
Yep. All I can say is the show has to be shorter because of Libsyn. There's really no way around that, short of everyone giving us huge piles of money.
Now, keep in mind, shorter means the episodes are going to be 45 to 50 minutes every day anyway.
Yeah, and we just can't keep doing these 90-minute episodes that we seem to do by accident.
The thing is, we could easily, if it weren't for the fact that we would have to pay Libsyn a lot of money.
Like, significantly more than we pay them now.
Because we're using the maximum default service they have. Anything beyond that, we have to negotiate custom.
Yeah, so that's not good. And as for the news, cutting it, I guess if you're not into board games and, the reason we have separate feeds of Geeknights is, if you're not interested in some of the things, then why are you listening?
I guess the best way to explain it is, think of this. We have geek news, like the It's basically Rim and Scott do what Twit does, only, in my opinion, better. But that's just me. Then we have the, sci-fi technology show, the anime, manga, comic show, the video games, board games show, and the special bit show. Really, we have 5 separate shows, one of which we do a little bit of at the beginning of every show instead of giving it its own day. That's the news bit. We could basically do the news as a whole show on Friday instead. We just don't because we go out of town almost every weekend.
Yeah. I guess, and also, we try to keep the news related to whatever that day is. So on Monday, we try to do tech news, and on Wednesday, we try to do anime news, and it was so hard for us to find news stories. I mean, not to find news stories. We found all of them. It's just to find one that's worth talking about.
The worst part is we'd usually often find ones that we wanted to talk about so much that we'd end up, instead of doing a news about it, we'd basically do a whole show about it and then do a whole normal show.
Yeah, that's... and while you guys might really enjoy the whole episode about the news story of the day, I don't know, that's not really what we're trying to do.
Though, we want more feedback on this, because if that's really what all of you want, I mean...
Yeah, I guess what we could do is, if from now on, if there's a news bit that we end up talking a whole lot about, we could just make that the episode.
Because any news bit is going to fit into one of the 4 days. Because note that most of the news we talk about would fit into Monday, science and tech.
Mm-hmm.
Monday is also the day we're the hardest hit for content.
Yeah, that's why we came up with the How a Computer Works, is to fill in all the days where you can't think of what else to talk about on Tech Day.
So, I think by doing 1 news instead of 2 news, you'll still get the same depth of commentary about the news as opposed to us cutting ourselves short, at least for now, until maybe our hosting situation improves.
Yep.
Yeah, and also, we'll definitely address the newses that are worth talking about on Mondays or possibly other days like Thursdays. So you'll still get everything. If you don't like anime, board games, manga, comics, video games, all of that, just listen to Monday and Thursday, I guess.
The other thing is, since we started the geekback segment, as I predicted, the amount of feedback we've been getting has exploded.
Yeah, if you don't get a response from us right away, or we seem to ignore you, we read it, and it's in our hopper somewhere.
Yeah, so because we like getting more feedback, we're going to keep the geekback segment because it makes more feedback come in.
Now, unless you all really don't like it and we get a lot of emails saying it should go away, but at the same token, that means we're getting a lot of geekbacks to read.
Yep. So if you've got something to say about this, go to the forum or email us or voicemail us or something and open your mouth. If you don't open your mouth, then you're not voting. We that's it. Hey, tough shit.
Yeah, we really need your feedback because we could basically do a podcast on anything at this point. Anything we know anything about.
Yeah, it has to be something we know something about, which is a lot of stuff.
So we need some direction here.
Okay, and on to the news they wanted to hear.
All right, now the news fits right in with the main topic today. So
right after we do the news, we're going to do things of the day, like quick, throw it in there, just to keep the order straight.
Now, this is something that's been known for a long time among content creators. And it's referred to in most cases as the 1% rule or the Magic Man rule. I've heard it referred to in a whole bunch of different ways. And the basic theory here is that for every 100 people in a given medium, 1 is a content creator, 10 will interact directly with that content, and the other 89 will consume that content and nothing more.
So take 100 people, put them on the internet. 1 of them is a blogger. 10 of them are people who comment on the blog. And the other 89 people, just read the blog or just look at it or who knows.
Now, there is a great wealth of empirical evidence showing that these ratios are for the most part true and that very few people create content and very few people interact with content, and the vast majority of human beings in all media do nothing but consume it. They are basically nothing more than fans.
Yeah, if you look at Dig, you've got...
I'm in the 89% on Dig.
Yeah, I'm in the 10% on Dig because I dig things and occasionally comment. And then the 1% are the people submitting things to Dig. So hey.
Yep.
And this relates very much to our topic today of the Zeal and the creativeness, talking about, how much geeks are creative and what they do and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, basically we're doing a long episode, well, we'll see how long it is, about geek... I don't know how I want to say about geek creativity and why people like us do the things we do.
And why other people don't.
It's also partly a rebuttal to a lot of what Anime World Order has been saying lately in regards to fandom, because they seem to have a bug up their butt about anime fandom not being what it used to be, and we submit that anime fandom, just like every other geekery out there, and we're going to talk about all of them, is not really changed. The rule still applies, but there's more people, and there are actually more content creators and more zeal now than there ever was.
Yeah, and also it's sort of a shout out to the Creative Mom podcast. It's
Yeah, of all the podcasts that link to us, I never expected a podcast called The Creative Mom to do it.
Yeah, but she linked to us, so I emailed her like, holy crap, the Creative Mom, what's up? And, she was all cool and geeky, kind of, and we were talking about how geeks are creative in different ways, and very cool. Very cool.
So consider that a shout out. I'll look, and if there's a promo, it'll get played at some point in this episode.
Yep. All right. Thing of the day.
Things of the day.
Who wants to go first?
I'll do it. Mine is actually really cool, and I think we'll talk about this more in the future, partly because I imagine us being involved in this in some way.
Oh, great.
Now, this is something called couch surfing, and very simply, it is a website that allows people to either put their couch up for free rent or seek out a free couch to borrow. So say I take a trip to Sweden, and I'm wandering around Sweden.
Dirty Sweden.
So ahead of time, I went to couch surfing, and I saw there's a cool dude somewhere in Sweden, and he'll let me sleep on his couch for a week. So I talked to him ahead of time. We work something out. I show up, and I sleep on his couch for a week while I explore Sweden.
Pretty cool.
Or we put our couch up, and then cool people traveling the world say, hey, I want to sleep in your house for tonight. And we work something out, and we let him stay on our couch.
Sounds very, very cool, except it also sounds very, very dangerous.
Yes, however, I am seriously considering us doing this at least once, so that one, we would get an awesome story to tell, and two, we could interview this person.
Yeah, I'm really not too frightened if it's like a person, because, I mean, if they're not packing any weaponry, like a gun or drugs or anything like that, that would get us in trouble or something like that, they're really not dangerous. I mean, even if they tried to beat us up, we could probably...
No. The worst thing that would probably happen, if they were a bad person, is they're asleep on the couch bed at night, right? And we're asleep. They wake up, take everything small of value they can get their hands on downstairs, and just leave.
Yep.
If I were an evil dude, that's what I would do.
Yep.
But we'll figure all that out. I just think it's a neat idea, and it seems like a lot of people are at least trying to do it, and I really like it when people actually trust their fellow human beings, even a little bit.
I think we're good enough judges of character to know when someone's going to be a thief or not, and the trick is that when this person comes, you kind of befriend them to make sure that they would feel bad by stealing. And
also webcam sitting pointed at them while they're sleeping.
Exactly. You make sure you get something from them. Like you say, all right, I'm going to have to take your ID before you go, something simple like that. And if they're an honest person, they'll say, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
You're letting me stay in your house. You can hold on to my ID.
Of course,
until I
then,
leave.
now that we've got their passport, they become an indentured servant and have to buy it back.
Ah, you're wise.
Yeah.
My thing of the day is from 1957 or 58. Actually, it's from 58.
We just got a feedback about people who don't want us to make inside jokes.
It's not an inside joke so much. It's from a popular internet thing.
I'm pretty sure it was a thing of the day, too.
Yeah, it was. It's actually probably from 1958, although there's a very small chance it's from 59. But the point is, this is a video from BBC One with Jimmy Page and his friends when he was 14 years old playing some Skittle on BBC One.
It's quite interesting. I laughed out loud when Jimmy said something to the effect of, I want to be a biological researcher.
Yeah, I mean, you watch it and, it's not so, it's just some kids playing some music. It's like watching a 14-year-old music recital, and you see Jimmy Page there and you're like, yep, that's him. Yeah, he still kind of danced around like that even when he was older. Yep. Wow, look, he was playing music when he was 14. And then the guy on BBC interviews them, and he's sort of a creepy British dude, but...
Creepy? I don't get the creepy vibe at all.
No, I think he was a little weird.
No, I just get the British vibe.
Oh.
He wasn't in any way creepy.
Okay, I guess if you don't think so. But, he interviews all the kids, and they all want to be, like, scientific researchers, which is pretty crazy. And the one kid who made his own bass, that was mad cool.
Yeah, he was a pretty good bassist, too, from what little we could see.
Yeah. So, Jimmy Page, god of guitar and rock, yeah, you can see him now when he was 14 years old playing music on BBC One.
Thus, without further ado, there is no Geeknights. There is only Zeal.
Well, they said don't do any inside jokes. Do as many jokes as possible.
All right, I submit. See, there's a thing on FARC where someone will make an inside kind of joke and they'll put /obscure ? At the end, which is them saying, I don't think anyone will get this joke. The thing is, a lot of times people will say obscure about something that is so not obscure. That's like making a Star Wars joke and then saying, you probably don't know what this is from, but Luke, I am your father.
It's a trap.
Anyway, so like we said, the idea to do this topic all basically came out of the fact that Anime World Order has asserted, and we've appeared on their show briefly, and then they've had some feedback against our ideas on their show, that fandom, now they say anime fandom, but we're going to broaden this to fandom in general. Geek
Geekery
fandom,
in general.
All geekery.
All schools. Everything we talk about.
That it's not the same as it used to be, that people don't have the zeal. We're going to use the word zeal, for the rest of this podcast to describe the witherall and energy and
the
desire,
wherewithal.
to
Yes.
create content for other people, to try to do something, to create something in the world that says, look at me, look at what I did, or just trying to make the world a better place in some way.
Now, let's start by going through the geekeries and quickly coming up with bunches of different ways that people involved in those geekeries express themselves creatively, right?
All right, we'll start with anime because that's the easiest. All right, people cosplay.
Yep.
People make anime music videos.
Yep.
They make fan parodies.
Mhm.
They make things like AMV Hell. They go to conventions and run panels. They do podcasts such as Geeknights or Anime World Order.
They write fan fiction. They make fan art. They make doujinshi, which I guess is sort of fan art. They run conventions themselves.
Yes.
They-
They voice act. A lot of amateur voice actors got their start, well, not definitely amateur voice actors, by just trying out and trying their best and practicing at conventions and getting some crap job somewhere.
They create webcomics. They try to go to school to become animators.
They create review sites. They create blogs.
They do arts and crafts and different merchandise to sell in Artist Alley.
Some of them create their own anime, a.k.a. the guy who did Hoshi no Koi and Place Promised in Our Early Days.
There are millions and millions and millions of things, that was a little exaggeration, that fans and geeks of anime and other visual arts do to express themselves and to show their zeal.
So, taking the 1% rule, there's a lot of anime fans in the world. So even if only 1% of them are trying to create, that's a lot of people who have the zeal and the desire to create content related to their hobbies and their interests.
Now let's go to the other geekeries, the technology people. Let's see, they write software.
Open source.
They build all of the Linux operating system. That's all geek zeal.
Well, you mean-
100% geek zeal.
You mean the GNU operating system running on the Linux kernel?
Whatever. Shut up. They all open source software is 100% geek zeal. Then you've got people building their own computers, people modding their own computers,
People war driving, people hacking.
people hacking all sorts of devices in their houses. Make Magazine, 100% geek zeal.
Freakers.
I think tech is so much.
We can't even, there's no reason to even continue. Almost everything technologies do is effectively creating content.
Yes. The gamers. Gamers do it too, man. I mean, you see guys modding their Xbox 360 cases, making video games, making mods to video games, making machinima with video games.
Making music videos to cat girls in Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy XI.
Making flash animations of Mario in an epic way.
I mean,
Remixing video game songs on OC Remix.
doing live Mario shows for people do things on stage.
Hanging question blocks around town.
Running video game or gaming conventions. Making role-playing game systems like Burning Wheel.
Oh yeah, those kind of gamers. God, people making up their own worlds to play RPGs in.
Our friend Alex, who was our dungeon master, who created entire worlds purely for our enjoyment and also his enjoyment.
Yes. Freaking making Katamari balls.
And rolling them around at conventions, much to my...
Rolling them around the city of San Francisco.
Mega 64.
Making stop motion animations of, figures doing stuff. God, there's just so much.
I think we've covered video games.
The point is that there are many, 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 many ways in which geeks use their zeal to create things. And even if it's only 1% of the geek population, it is so much more now than it ever was before.
Now, it seems to me that I hate to keep ragging on Anime World Order, but again, they're the ones
That's the point of this episode.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
They're the ones who basically brought this up with us. Now, their assertions seem to be that fandom, they refer specifically to anime fandom, back in the day when it was difficult, when it was hard to be an anime fan and the technology wasn't there, they seem to have this idea that the zeal was greater than, and that the people who were involved had more zeal, more desire, more will to create something, to be something, to do something. And a lot of their evidence is like anime music videos is the perfect example. Back in the day, anime music videos honestly were mostly terrible. It took months to create one. You had to sit there with a bunch of VCRs, pausing tapes and switching tapes in and out.
And if you were lucky, you were at a college with some video editing hardware.
Yeah.
Machines. You didn't have a computer that could edit video. You had machines.
Yep, and yet nowadays, with technology, anyone can create an anime music video who has any amount of intelligence and skill, and thus, a lot of people who enjoy anime really want to contribute back or make something or do something, and they're making AMVs. There are so many thousands of anime music videos submitted to Otakon every year that they can't even show a small portion of them.
Now, of course, it's obvious most of them are crap. In fact, I would say 99.9999% of them are crap.
Now, I would submit that even back in the day, the same percentage of everything created was crap.
Yeah, I mean, just because someone had to work harder to make something doesn't make that thing any better.
Now, we see this fallacy in a lot of fandoms. A lot of people will say, back in the day, it was better. I had to go to Japan and get the Famicom and get the game and take it home and sit there with a Japanese to English dictionary and translate it as I played it. And kids today don't have the zeal. They don't have to fight. They don't have to try and strive to get their video game. They can just buy it and there's a fan sub or a script and they can just download it and look at it.
That means that their energy can go into something useful.
Something creative. I mean, I guess the main point Anime World Order made was that fans don't have the zeal anymore. And fans never really had the zeal to begin with, in my opinion, because if you're just a fan and nothing more, you were not creating anything, you were merely consuming.
Yeah, and even if you have to go through more effort to do your consuming, that just means you're a crazier fan willing to pay a higher price. When it was harder to be a fan, there were fewer fans, and only the crazy fans were fans and no one else could get access. Now that everyone has access, the total amount of zeal or fandom hasn't increased or decreased. It's just the barrier to entry has been lowered, which is always a good thing.
Yep, and one of the points they made, specifically with anime fandom again, was that a lot of the evidences that we cite of zeal, they say are crap. The big thing they keep saying is cosplay, that cosplay is a waste of energy and it's crap, and people do it just to get attention.
Yeah, and they're pointing at people like wearing Naruto headbands and stuff.
Those people aren't cosplaying.
No, they're not. If you ask them, if you see a guy walking around a convention with a Naruto headband, and you say, hey, are you cosplaying? And he'll be like, no, what's wrong with you? It's the same as me wearing like a Spider-Man shirt I don't have one, but you know those Spider-Man shirts that look like a piece of Spider-Man's costume?
Or I have a little Lacus Klein thing on my cell phone. People don't say, they don't make a big deal about it. It's just hanging there.
Yeah, he's not cosplaying as Lacus Klein. He just has a Lacus Klein memorabilia.
I should cosplay as Lacus Klein.
Yeah, the people who are cosplaying are freaking cosplaying. And those are the only people who will say they are cosplaying.
I mean, I used to stay in the suite with a bunch of crazy cosplayers and voice actors at Anime Central. Not only would they spend months and months creating intricate, perfect costumes, but they would create another costume as a group at the convention every year. They all brought sewing machines. These people were dedicated, and they were creating something purely for the enjoyment of other people and their own enjoyment.
I think it's because Anime World Order, they don't like cosplay, and, they have their search for the truth making fun of these people. And don't get us wrong, we don't like those people either.
Many of the people we were talking about, we would also make fun of were we to meet them.
But we do not begrudge them. If someone else gets their happies from wearing Naruto headbands and being all silly, we don't care.
And if someone decides to take all of their zeal, all of their energy, that in the old days would have been wasted tracking down information on obscure anime so that they could watch it, on making costumes instead, now instead of being just a consumer, which is basically almost nothing, they are being a creator. They're being an interactor. They have moved into the upper 10% or the upper 1% of people.
Yep, and the thing is, while the rule still stands that 1% of people actually make something and then 10% actually, interact with it, that rule hasn't changed. It's just that back in the day, those 89% of people who were just viewing had to do something to view it. So it looked to you like 100% of the people had zeal and were doing creative works, when in fact it was still the 1% rule. It hasn't changed at all.
Now, another issue that they brought up was that in any convention, it's not just anime, and they even admitted that this is broadly across all the geekeries. Anytime there is a famous person or a convention or a guest at a convention or someone who is big in geekery, like the man who created Metal Gear Solid or the man who created Utena, it used to be back in the day that if someone like that came to a convention or came to America, all the fans of that thing who went could just talk to them. Because
this doesn't really have to do with the zeal.
Well, it does in that nowadays, if you're just a fan, you can't have that kind of access anymore. And I guess, I don't know why you would expect it, because the people who get the access to the things are the people who have the zeal and try to create the content and try to be the people who will be doing that thing when the person they are a fan of passes on, the next generation.
It's the 1% rule has always applied and still does apply. There are just so many more people now because the barrier to entry has been lowered that the 1% is actually a bigger number. It's just shadowed because the 89% is also tremendously bigger. So before, you would have 100 guys at a convention, and one of them would actually be a creator, and the other, 10% would be interactors, and 89 guys would look like they were creators because they were putting in a lot of work. But they weren't actually making anything. They were just basically, that's the equivalent of spending money. It's just back in the day, you didn't spend money to get stuff. You would just do work to get stuff directly.
Now, of course, as a very brief and important aside, don't think that we're saying that people who consume are bad or anything, because consuming things is a huge part of the world. And just because you are a content creator in one sphere doesn't mean that you're not a consumer in another sphere.
Exactly. I could make video games, and I've thought about it, and, I've kind of slowly worked towards making a few sort of game things, but in video games, I'm basically a consumer.
Or like, we do a podcast. We have listeners who are purely consumers or at best interactors with our podcast, yet they are content creators of other spheres that we have nothing to do with.
Yep. Just because someone might not be creating where you can see it, or you might not like what they're creating, or what they're creating isn't very good, doesn't mean they're not creating. It doesn't mean they don't have zeal. It just means that they suck, or, they're not working as hard, but they're still able to produce something.
Yeah, and I mean, someone who's trying to create content, that's one of the greatest things a human being can do, in my opinion, to try to create something.
Yeah, and even if it's a lot easier for them to do it, doesn't make it any less good.
In fact, that just makes it possible for them to reach even further bounds and go even greater.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you had one world where if you wanted to... Here, let's use the guy who made his own bass in that Jimmy Page video.
All right.
Back in the day, he had to make his own bass. So not so many people could be bass players, but at the same time, that guy had to spend time making his own bass that he could have spent practicing. And as a result, even though he had enough zeal to make his own bass and play it, he didn't get as far as he could because he lost practice time out to making instruments.
Now, there are many more people in the world. Basses you can just buy in a music store. There are a lot more bass players now than there were, 40, 50 years ago.
And most of them suck.
However, the ones that don't suck are in many cases better than the ones 40 and 50 years ago, simply because they have to spend far less time accessing the content, and they get to spend far more time creating it.
Yep. And, even though... you might say, oh, there's less zeal now. Before it was just concentrated, and there were people with zeal back in the day that just couldn't get it out because there was no outlet that was possible for them to get their zeal out.
Or, anime fandom was very small, to use that as an example. So there were probably a lot of people who would have been content creators and who would have loved anime, but because they didn't know it existed, or the barrier to even being a consumer was so high, they had no chance to even find out that not only do they love anime, but they're going to be the next Miyamoto.
Yep.
I don't know why I said Miyamoto. I meant to say, yeah. Miyamoto, though, works because, video games.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a next Miyamoto. What do we do?
Something will happen.
Yeah. The point is that, just because you might not like what someone creates, they're still creating.
And that's a wonderful thing.
It's a very wonderful thing. And there are so many ways in which people create. Zillions.
I mean, think about, we could go on for an hour just about all the things that geeks do to create content.
I mean, go on any blog. If you look on, Kotaku is a great example. That's a gaming blog. Sure, they do news about video games and stuff, but about half the posts every day, which is basically the reason I read the site, is for these posts, are usually videos on YouTube depicting different geeky creative works relating to video games.
Yes. I mean, or one big example they were using a lot was that back in the day, Geeknights created the Daikon animation, and that was an example of zeal. They sat there and they powered through and they created something to show to the world.
That was very difficult to make and was very high quality.
Nowadays, We have the Hoshino Koa guy as an example, who put the same amount of zeal in, but because he had better tools, better technology, and better access,
With less effort, he was able to make something so much more amazing.
and that's not the exception. I mean, how many animations are people just making and throwing on the internet?
That you're not seeing.
Because
They're not big releases.
but they're all out there, and there's, I mean, look, we have two things of the day every day, and many of them are things people have created that are in some way awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the Hoshino Koei guy is actually, just because you don't see all the other animators out there. I mean, go to any college where there's an animation class. Every one of those kids is making crazy, awesome animations constantly.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, I sat through the animation screenings at RIT one time because I was working and I didn't have much to do, so I slipped out of the office and I slipped into one. And there was some amazing stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, a lot of it, I mean, this was just like some kid's project. It blew away the Daikon animation in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that you can't see, and just because now it's such a bigger picture that only the really good stuff shines through, you're missing out on a lot of other things that don't shine through. It's like saying, oh, no one makes movies anymore, and you don't even know that the art theater exists. You're only looking at the Blockbuster theater.
So I guess our main point is that it doesn't take zeal to be just a fan anymore, but being just a fan in and of itself of anything, not anime, anything in the world, is nothing special. Anyone can be a fan. It's only special if you go beyond that to interact with whatever it is that you're a fan of, to try to create something new, or, in the very least, if you're one of those people who tries to spread the thing you like to other people, you've already moved into the interaction category.
Yeah, it's the people who are in, the 89% who don't do anything. They just consume. There's nothing wrong with those people, and they don't have zeal. The 10% of people who interact, those are cool people. You hang out with them, you talk to them, but they don't really ever make anything, they don't get famous and they don't whatever.
But they're still creating things. I mean, we've, like in Geeknights, in our forums, there have been a lot of very well thought out arguments and posts in our forum that, in their own right, were amazing creations, in my opinion.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of the people who made those are people who are doing their share of creating in the 1% in some other category. Maybe they have a podcast somewhere else, or they're a webcomic artist.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our listeners do a lot of awesome things, and a lot of the emails and forum posts we get are people telling us about the awesome things they're doing.
Yeah, we did have a discussion in our forum at one point about whether being a geek was strictly a consumer culture. Was geek culture a consumer culture? That was the discussion.
Yep, and the answer that we gave was that no, most people are consumers, because that's how the world works. No matter how much you create, you will always consume more than you create. I mean, look at it on a global scale. I don't create my own food. I consume it, and I have no input into the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't build my own house. I consume a house.
Other than the capitalist invisible hand.
Yeah. But I'm making a broad brush point here.
Here we go with the broad-ass brush.
I don't create content on a lot of tech sites. I read the content because I can't create everything. I create the things I can create, I consume the things I can't, and I interact with the things I wish I could.
There you go.
That's the way I would put it. And 89% of geeks are content consumers. 89% of people are content consumers.
Yep, a geek is just someone who's into something. You might be a guy just buying Gundam robots, for example.
Well, remember, a geek is someone who's into something, and a nerd is someone who's equally into something. But a geek will get along with other geeks of different interests, and a nerd won't.
Here we go. Here's a great example. You ready? Because the Gundam robot. Because Gundam robots are something with which we can cover all three categories of people.
Very true. You
Yep.
gonna talk about Tom and his awesome Gundams?
Yes, I am.
All right.
So 89% of people, you take out of all the people in the world who are into Gundam robots, right? The models. 89% of them buy the models and put them together. That's me. Those people are consumers. 10% of the people who are into Gundam robots will not only buy them and put them together, but they might play with them or make, something else with them
Or run a panel on making them, or talk to people at a panel about making them, or share
Or they'll just be on a forum online where people talk about Gundam robots.
Yeah, hey, I built an awesome Gundam robot. Hey, so did I. Awesome.
1% of the people will make their own Gundam robots or make incredible modifications to them or enter the model contest at different conventions and all that crazy stuff. You can see how you can miss where the zeal is when you have such a broad group of people in different categories that all look the same. And, if you're not looking for the zeal and maybe you don't like Gundam robots, then you'll totally miss what's going on. And, it's sort of like if your vision is too narrow, you won't notice things that are, happening.
Yep,
yeah,
and
words losing, not have.
And I think that's one of the main reasons why geek culture seems to be expanding so rapidly, and that all geek conventions seem to be slowly converging. I mean, gaming conventions always have anime. Anime conventions always have gaming and video gaming. Video game conventions always have some sci-fi. Everything's converging because any geek who creates things within geekery or is interested in something can recognize other geeks who are interested in other things, even if those things are completely unrelated.
Even the Super Dolphy people are making something.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit right now, I don't like Super Dolphy.
I hate Super Dolphy, and people who make Super Dolphy are scary, usually, and they kind of freak me out. But you know what? I will not deny their creative skills and their zeal for making little, costumes to put on ball-jointed dolls.
I have a lot of respect for those people because they put a lot of time and effort into their hobby, and it's really an impressive thing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be any less impressive if they somehow had, used a sewing machine instead of sewing by hand.
Yeah, well, it's like, you're in math class in high school, and they let you use calculators now. Now, a lot of people argue that, yeah, because people have to use calculators, everything's easier now and kids don't learn as much. But at the same time, because kids' minds are freed from doing the mundane adding and subtracting and integrating over and over and over again, they can explore much more advanced concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess in some, because we're actually going to try to stay on schedule tonight, our argument basically is that the zeal is here and has always been here. The amount of zeal has never changed. In fact, I would say that the amount of zeal has increased because there are more people total. So if there are more people, 1% of those people is also a greater number. So a greater number of people have zeal.
It's just that back in the day, a lot of zeal was bottled up because the barrier to entry was too high. So people with a little bit of zeal or a medium amount of zeal couldn't use it for anything because it was too hard. And the only people who actually got their zeal expressed were the people who had insane amounts of zeal in them.
Yep, if you only had 10 points of zeal and it took 9 points to watch anime, you only had 1 more point to spend on trying to create anything anime-related. Nowadays, it costs 0 points to be an anime fan. You can spend all 10 of your points running an anime convention.
Yep. So it might look like there's less zeal because there are plenty of people doing something that used to take a lot of zeal to do. And these people don't seem to have the same zeal that was had before because maybe, back in the day, only people with 20 points of zeal were in there. And now there's a zillion people who only have 2 points of zeal in there.
Yep.
But 2 times a zillion that used to be bottled up is now released.
And now I would submit that most of the zeal is spent on pursuits that are much more useful to mankind or much more creative. People are creating things instead of spending energy to consume them.
Yep.
So I guess my final thought here would simply be, I urge all of you, we generally don't get very preachy on Geek Nights, but go out and create something. That's the one thing, if nothing else in the world, that's the one thing you can do to stand out from the other 6-7 billion people on this planet.
I mean, think about what you do in your life. And if you're just consuming and listening to podcasts and reading blogs and buying things and watching them and playing video games and you don't make anything or do anything, take the first step and join our forum or start a blog or even a live journal or something. Do something.
MySpace, a GeoCities website.
Is GeoCities still around?
Yes. In fact, some of my files are still up there.
Yeah, do something to get yourself into the 10% of people interacting with. And once you're there and you're comfortable, then go for the 1%. You mean, what's the point of, living if you're just going to be one of the 89% of people who sucks?
Yep. I mean, I've actually been very energized about this topic lately because, and I'm going to plug it again, I've been listening to this 12 Byzantine Emperors podcast.
I'm going to have to subscribe to this damn thing to make you shut up.
And I'm
going to do it right now.
And I've also been reading a lot about Roman and Byzantine history because they're subjects that I knew from Quiz Bowl. Like, I could name a bunch of Roman emperors and what they did, and I could name a bunch of Roman generals and what they did, and I could name a bunch of dates and what happened on them. But I didn't know a lot about the details of what was going on, and the more I study, the history of Rome condensed into a tiny little nutshell of a thimble is the people who changed everything were the people who had the zeal to go out. And a lot of people died because it took a lot of zeal to get anywhere. But all of history back then was individual men convincing other people to do great things.
Yep.
So I'm on this kick of creating things.
We've connected it to history. I think we're done.
Yes. All we got to do is Godwin it, and we're out. Hitler had a lot of zeal.
Woo, woo, woo. Godwin alert. Godwin alert. Is
All right.
Godwin an inside joke? I guess people who don't know about it.
I don't know. I guess that'll be our final question. Is Godwin an inside joke? Well, no, my final question is, to Anime World Order, can you rebut this?
I don't know. I think we're going to have to put this whole thing on hold, and then at Otakon, we're going to have to sit down with them 2-on-2 and record, the ultimate debate of
the ultimate showdown of ultimate destiny.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that was Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for our opening theme.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com. If you like our podcasts, you'll love our forums. Make sure you visit them. You can send your email feedback to geeknights@gmail.com. And if you want, you can leave us a voicemail at 206-333-1537.
Geeknights airs every weeknight, Monday through Thursday.
Geeknights is recorded with absolutely no studio and no audience. But unlike those other talk shows, it's actually recorded at night.